Hey everyone, iMagic here, and I'm here today to talk about the top 5 Super Poly monsters that you can summon with Super Poly against your opponent. You know what I'm going about here. So right now, with the branded Despia, Albaz, Invoke, Shadow, Dogmatica, DPE, Dragoon, Fusion, Summoning everywhere, Super Poly is a really good card to use right now. So, as Super Poly is kind of one of the top staples that I can recommend to anyone to have in their deck right now, especially if you have the room in your extra deck, 100%. So I'm going to kind of talk about what I think are the kind of top 5 monsters that you should be running. The more generic, so it's not one specifically designed for a matchup. You'll see where it kind of has a theme towards certain decks more or less, but this is going to be more representing kind of what you're going to also be facing on a day-to-day meta. You have to remember, Albaz Branded Fusion is a really broken deck that came in structure decks. So these are decks that you're going to see a lot more often and have a lot more representation, because not only are they cheap, they're new. So you do need to think, yes, I may be leaning towards, oh, this takes out this a bit more than it takes out that deck. It's about representation. You're going to see these decks that I'm going to be on about that lose to Super Poly a lot more often. So let's get right into it, but before we do, guys, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, comment down below what you want to see next, what other Super Poly targets you may think I missed out on and may have been worth putting into there. I'll have a little bit of honourable mentions as well, don't get me wrong, but these are kind of my personal top 5 of what should be in your extra decks if you're going to be running Super Poly, and are the most generic, splashable ones that you're going to have. But let's get right into the video. Coming in at number 5, I'm giving this one to Mysterion, the Dragon Crown. This is number 5 for a reason, because there's not many decks that will have a board like this. Having a spellcaster and a dragon on the field, it doesn't often happen in many decks. There are a handful of decks, there's more than one deck that I can list that will have a board with this on the field, and it's a good way to get rid of them. So do not get me wrong, at no point am I turning around and kind of targeting just Albaz. Yes, Albaz branded is one of them, where if they aren't playing correctly, they may have an Albion and a Dragoon, an Albion and a Winder, so the Dragon and the Spellcaster. So there is a level of that you are going to see a lot of. You know, Dragoon is really easy to bring on to the field with Hexil Fusion and Branded Fusion, plus with Albion. So if the player isn't playing correctly, or it's just literally Branded Fusion, gets Dragoon, pass, then it's going to be very easy to take them out. So this is why I'm going for Mysterion. 3000 is a good effect, good attack. It has actually a good effect as well, just to be able to kind of deal with types that are on the board. So being able to kind of just clear your opponent's board in some cases is a really powerful effect. Like I said, 3000 is a good attack margin to have. 3000 up is where the high boss monster attack stats come in, and it can be very powerful. And finally, it also can't be used as Fusion Poly material. The fact that it can't be used as Fusion material is very crucial, because like I said, in a format where super polymerization is going to be lingering around everywhere, being able to summon something that's not going to lose to Super Poly is actually quite crucial. You know, there's nothing wrong with having something like that in your deck, so that also gives it a lot of merit. Another deck as well that could be ending on these types of boards, if you're going against a Pendulum player, there's always one at every locals. Pendulums, they might end on the Odd Eyes Vortex, and they might have a Jackal King or an Endymion, Spellcasters, Dragons. Virtual World will have a Crystal Wing, an Ultimate Tolkien. They'll have something like a Bamboozling Gossip Shadow, which is a Spellcaster, so there's going to be that. You never know if you have going against a Shadow or Invoked player, and say they bring out a Dragoon or just any type of dragon, that again is there because there's going to be Spellcasters and Dragons. So it is kind of, they are the two most popular types to be playing around with. Spellcasters and Dragons have always been two of like the most popular. So this being kind of a blend of the two, very generic. If your opponent has a Dragoon and say a Borreload Savage Dragon, two problematic cards that you want to get rid of ASAP, then boom, there you go, that's the target. So, but that, because it isn't always generic in every deck, that's why it's only the number 5 spot. Coming in to number 4, and this is something a lot of people are going to be disagreeing with me. A lot of you would say this should be the number 3. This should be the top 3. You know, why isn't it number 3? And I will explain in a moment. But I'm going to go with Mud Dragon of the Swamp. This is incredibly generic in a sense of all it requires is 2 monsters with the same attribute but different types. So, for example, 2 wind monsters, one being a winged beast and one being a warrior. Where have I seen that before? Going into Baron de Fleur and then any other winged beast that your opponent might have, or just any other wind that they might have. Easy. Or anything else. Being able to kind of just clear off any extra stuff that your opponent's going to have is quite powerful. Dark, you know, don't get me wrong, light, wind, they're all lingering about right now. You know, even with sharks, you might have water, so you might have fish, you might have sea serpents, they're going to be different, aqua, but they're all going to be water. Not bad. So it is always going to be there, and it is a very good card, but it's only 1900 attack. It has a bit of protection against targeting, but there is actually a lot of cards that deal with problems like that easily. There's no targeting crap anymore. A lot of it is non-targeting removal, a lot of it sends, and that's kind of how the meta's leaning towards. So because of its pure attack stats and what the effect is, it's a bit meh. So that is kind of why I am only giving it the number 4 spot, because the stats of what it has compared to everything else is what renders it down. Incredibly generic, do not get me wrong, there are a lot of decks that are going to be losing to this card, but not as many as you think. This kind of is just cleaning up the last little bit of rubbish and dust. Generic, but stats is what bringing it down for me, so that's kind of why I want to give Mud Dragon of the Swamp just the number 4 spot. Number 3, I'm going to give to Yugioh. So this is a really good card right now because two warriors but with different attributes is more good. It's going to come up more likely than a lot of people realise. When you need to remember, PK is in the format, and yes, PK is mostly darks, but there are a lot of warriors that they can also bring out. So I've seen a lot of players with PK going into multiple Levia dragons to then go into a utopic future, into the utopic Draco future, which is a light warrior. So that means that they have a light and a dark warrior. When you think that Utopic Draco Future is a card that's still floating around in the meta, when you think of Baron de Fleur being a wind warrior, when you think of DPE being a dark warrior, when you notice that all these different warriors are lingering around as boss monsters and people are developing decks to have multiples, so more than one of them, it's not surprising that, you know, maybe pick warrior, you know? Use this as a kind of a good fusion monster. You know, against something like Hero, who just destroys them immediately because they're going to have so many different types of warriors. But, you know, you are going to see a mix of light and dark. If it's a hero deck, which there is in the meta right now, being PK, like I said, you are going to see multiple warriors. So I do generally think, and also the attack stats and the actual effects as well behind it, is really, really powerful. This is a really powerful card, and I think a lot of people have been sleeping on it, but seeing Baron de Fleur being used in such a way like it is now, seeing DPE constantly everywhere as well, and now seeing them both together, Utopic Future, and many other warriors that I can name as well, kind of being just slapped in together with decks, yeah, I fully believe that this should be the number 3 spot, and it's only because of the current cards that are being used, like I said, DPE, Utopic Future, Baron, as like serious boss monsters in decks together, is solely why this is the number 3 spot. If there wasn't as much representation, Mud Dragon and Yugioh would be swapped immediately, but currently right now, through what I've been seeing with PK and just generic as well with Tenyi, I know Tenyi, Sword Soul are worms, but the way I've been seeing them being able to get out Baron, and also they can happily then go into a DPE as well because they just make Verte, and the way it's working is incredible because they climb up, going down the Mecha Phantom Beast Auroradon climb. It's incredibly powerful, and they can end on a Baron and a DPE, so boom, slap it right there. But yeah, 100% this is the number 3 spot for me. There's no denying that right now, just because of the type of representation in the meta decks and the problem that the warrior monsters are on your field as well, and the way you can just get rid of them. That's why Yugioh is 100% the number 3 spot. Coming in at number 2, so everyone can kind of have a guess at what's going to be number 1 and what's going to be number 2. There's 2 very obviously generic super poly monsters that I haven't mentioned, and it's really now a matter of which one do I think is better. So coming in at number 2, I'm giving to Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. Do not get me wrong, this is a really, really powerful monster, and with Fallen of the Albaz being half of that monster's summoning condition, being its own super poly, so it's one of them, summon it, effect, call, make this card, broken. 2 darks, just that's it, that's all it requires, is incredibly generic, and arguably the most generic on the list, beating the one that's next. But the reason why the one that's next is there is because of current meta status and the effect. Being able to nuke the board, 2800 attack is no laughing matter. Level 8 can mean a lot. There are a lot of good XCs if you ever go down that route for level 8s. Yeah, it's just really, really powerful. Mimicking effects can come up, but it's mainly just the 2 darks. Dark is incredibly powerful in this format. You know, like I said, Verte into a Dragoon or a DPE, branded PK, they're just dark decks that you are going to see a lot of representation with. So amazing, amazing synergy with the meta, and it should always be one of the top picks. This and the number 1 spot should always be your top picks no matter what. If you have Super Poly, this is what you're making with Super Poly. But Starving Venom is such a, it's the face of Super Polying your opponent, I believe. Over my next card that I'm going to say. It is the face, but it is just such a broken card, but unfortunately, just by so small of a margin, I think has to go to 2. Strictly because a lot of people are aware of this card. DPE, they know to get rid of their Verte after they summon the DPE, because they know they are just open to Super Poly. Open to the next monster as well that I'm going to talk about. All of you know what I'm on about. But they are fully aware that that's a problem. Against Dragoon, bit different. But they just know that they need to be aware of the Super Poly threat, which can either make Starving Venom or the number 1 spot. But unfortunately, when you are going to drop that Super Poly, you're going to pick the number 1 spot before you pick Starving Venom. Starving Venom's broken, but number 1 is number 1 for a reason. But that's why I'm giving Starving Venom the number 2 spot. And coming in at number 1, if it wasn't obvious, it's Predaplant Dragostapilia. Damn, this card is, 1, just obscenely broken anyway, as it's incredibly generic. 2, the effect is actually kind of nuts. So let's kind of go into the stats first. 2700 attack is still quite high. You know, if it's good enough for Fluunderee's Empin, why isn't it good enough for this? This is actually still a high attacking monster. So I know 3k is kind of the top of the table where you want to be reaching. But if you're above 2500, you're doing fairly well. That's kind of, you know, if you're between 2.5 and 3k, you're coming up to boss monster stats. And this card definitely would claim that. The effect being able to just be a monster negate by just adding Predator counters to the monster each turn, and then doing that, just continue. The more you have on the board, the more monsters you're negating, and that's just a blank. The second he's got a Predator counter, it's getting negated. It's actually a really, really broken effect. So good stats, good effect, and what it's going to be getting rid of is a fusion monster and a dark. Basically, with the way the meta is looking right now, that is a lot of what your opponent is dropping. If your opponent goes down Verte to then end on a Dragoon, it's not happening as much now, but if they do that, you can get rid of both of them immediately. DPE players have wised up and immediately knew. Get rid of this 500 attack dark monster that's opened me up to Super Poly immediately. They're making themselves get rid of it easly. But it's still incredibly broken. Like I said, it's a monster negate. Having negation is way better than if you lose this monster, you nuke the board. By a long shot, because you want to keep that progression going, you want to slow your opponent down, not kick them back when they get you down. And the release of the Albaz Strike structure deck means that there are a lot of fusions in the game, but it's not all dark. There is a mixture of light and dark fusions. Where I spoke about the Mysteria and the Dragon Crown, getting rid of Dragoon and then getting rid of Albion, yes, what I listed there, Mysterio and the Dragon Crown, is an amazing card because you can't get Super Poly then. However, if it's just the Super Poly you have, you might as well go for the Predaplant Dragostapelia because at least you get a monster on top of this. The potential is so unlimited right now. Against Shadow as well, getting rid of a Winder and whatever else they could have, really broken. Against, obviously, any Invoke player, like I said, any Shadow player, any of the Branded, any of the Despia, you know, just getting rid of DPE, Dragoon, all these broken fusion monsters that are constantly lingering around. Slap that in, cool. I'm going to summon out my Monster Negate, get rid of your stuff, and I've got a big monster as well that's just going to slow you down. That is, to me, the full reason why this deserves the #1 spot, because the effect is broken, it is incredibly generic, and the stats are good. 100% got to give it to Predaplant Dragostapelia. Now, I'm going to give 2 honourable mentions to 2 Super Poly monsters that I think could be on this list, but just missing it. So firstly, I'd give it to, this is a kind of tie actually, the way I'm about to say it, it's either, yeah, I know I'm giving it to Eldritch, the Mad Golden Lord. It's a really, really good card, but like I said, it's only against Eldritch, and that is a problem. 60 card Lich, you know, Eldritch, zombie control, just Eldritch pure, Eldritch trap, you know, Eldritch is just broken as a deck. So getting rid of Eldritch and a Conk, Eldritch and a Hulk, Eldritch and just anything else that's a zombie on the field, it's just really broken. So Eldritch is a really, really strong deck, but then that's it. That's all it's going to be there for. And that's the problem why I wouldn't want to give the Mad Golden Lord a spot on this list, because it's only good against one deck. The one deck it's good against is broken, but it's just not worth it to run. Maybe a side card if you go to a lot of locals, and you know that you're going to have to deal with a lot of Eldritch players, because it's also a really good stat, 3800, and Eldritch actually just can't beat their own boss monster, funny enough. They need to use outside help. If you're going against pure Eldritch, they actually lose to their own fusion monster. So it is kind of funny in that sense. But it's the pros don't outweigh the cons, and that's unfortunate. It is a really good monster, so it is a shame about that. I would also go for the Golem at Ignista, the Earth Golem at Ignista. 1 Link and 1 Cyburst is going to be really powerful with the new Decode Talker Heat Soul coming out. So it means Code Talkers are looking at you kind of nuts right now. So I feel like Code Talkers are going to be represented a lot more often, just because people are going to be very fond of using this new card. Against Salamangreat as well, it works against that. It's a fan favourite deck that's going to probably get support in the next ban list. We know Circle's coming to 3, so it just means more players are going to be playing this. And against 60 card Lich, if you're going first, you set the Super Poly, you stop that Dotscaper into Link Devotee, Link Disciple climb, so they can Psyflock you. So that actually comes up in some meta plays. But yeah, it's mainly going to be against, like I said, Code Talkers and Salamangreats. So it is really good. And another one I'd actually give a little shout out to is maybe, you know, Borrelode Furious. 2 Dark Dragons is not the most generic, because it's asking for dragons that have to be dark, so that is a mere moment. However, Dragon Link is doing quite well. I can't deny that it's not a good deck. Yeah, Dragon Link is actually a really, really good deck right now. With the Brave Engine, it's just bonkers. And plus the release of the new Boral End Dragon, you don't know, you might actually see a lot more Rocket players kind of about, and Dragon Link might kind of just make a little appearance. Doubt it, but you can't say no. But yeah, there are a couple of the honourable mentions, but yeah, hope you enjoyed the list. Comment down below what you might think I missed out on. You know, if there's something blatantly obvious I should have mentioned. Oh, why didn't you mention this? Why didn't you play the Despia one? Why didn't you talk about anything of Alistair? Because Alistair's a really good fusion thing to playing anyway. But yeah, comment down below what you think I missed out on. Like, subscribe, and share the video. Peace.